The Imperial scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. Captain Reed of the Imperial Exploration Fleet watched through the main viewport as his sensors picked up signs of civilization from the third planet. It was supposed to be a routine border patrol, but what they found would change the galaxy forever. "Another primitive world, Captain," said his first officer, looking at the data streams. "They haven't even colonized their moon permanently." Reed frowned, something about the readings catching his eye. "Look at their development curve." He pointed to the screen. 200 years from steam engines to spaceflight. That's not normal. The scout ship recorded everything as they watched Earth's communications, studied their military capabilities, and analyzed their technology. Reed's concern grew with each passing hour. These humans were different from any species the Empire had encountered in its 10,000 years of existence. 3 days later, in the Imperial Palace on Capital World, the High Council gathered to discuss the discovery. 12 ancient beings sat around a crystal table, their bodies wrapped in ceremonial robes that sparkled with embedded technology. "They are nothing," declared High Commander Wilson, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Primitive weapons, internal combustion engines, and crude spacecraft. They haven't even mastered gravity control." Reed stood before the council, his hands clasped behind his back. "My lords, I must disagree. These humans, they're advancing at an unprecedented rate. Look at their history. They went from basic flight to landing on their moon in just 66 years. Many species advance quickly during their industrial phase," said another council member, dismissing Reed's concern with a wave of his hand. "Not like this," Reed insisted. "They have thousands of different cultures constantly competing and collaborating. Their technology doesn't advance in a straight line. It explodes in all directions at once. They've developed some technologies far beyond their apparent level." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Reed continued, "Their computer systems are primitive, but their coding is incredibly advanced. They have no gravity control, but their understanding of physics is remarkable. They're still using chemical rockets, but they've already theorized most of our advanced propulsion concepts." High Commander Wilson leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting, Captain?" "I suggest we leave them alone, or better yet, establish peaceful contact. If we try to conquer them—" Reed paused, choosing his words carefully. "I believe it would be a mistake." Laughter echoed through the chamber. "You fear these primitives." Wilson's voice dripped with scorn. "They don't even have unified planetary government." "That's what worries me," Reed replied quietly. "They maintain military readiness constantly. They've been fighting among themselves for their entire history. Their weapons may be primitive, but they have more combat experience than any race we've encountered." "Enough." Wilson stood, his robes shimmering. "We are the Imperial Empire. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We have conquered species far more advanced than these humans." He turned to the council. "I propose we send them the standard ultimatum. Submit or face pacification." The council voted. Reed watched with a sinking heart as 11 hands rose in agreement. Only the eldest council member, Observer Smith, abstained, his ancient eyes meeting Reed's with shared concern. As Reed left the chamber, Smith's voice whispered in his mind through a private communication channel. "You're right about them, Captain. I've studied their entertainment media. They've imagined and planned for alien invasions thousands of times. They call it science fiction. They're not just ready for us. They've been rehearsing for this moment for generations." The next day, humanity received its first official alien contact, a demand for immediate surrender and integration into the Empire. The message was sent in every major Earth language, transmitted on all frequencies. In the privacy of his quarters, Reed began preparing his resignation from the Imperial fleet. He had served the Empire faithfully for 40 years, but he knew what was coming. The humans wouldn't submit, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The United Nations Security Council chamber had never been so quiet. On the large screen, the alien message played again. Submit to Imperial rule within 48 Earth hours or face immediate pacification. General Thompson stood at the podium, his face grim. Ladies and gentlemen, we've confirmed this is not a hoax. The signal comes from beyond our solar system, and our telescopes have spotted their ships. The room erupted in chaos. Representatives from every major nation spoke at once until the Secretary General banged his gavel. Order. We need order. What are our options? Asked the Chinese representative, her voice steady despite the situation. The general clicked to the next slide. Our hackers have been working nonstop since the message arrived. The aliens made a crucial mistake. They used our internet to broadcast their ultimatum. While doing so, they exposed themselves to our cyber warfare teams. A murmur of interest spread through the room. The general continued. The alien technology is advanced, but their computer security is overconfident. They've never faced a species that developed digital warfare before space travel. Our teams have already cracked their basic encryption. But their weapons, the Russian representative began, are powerful, Thompson agreed, but not unbeatable. The data we've stolen shows they haven't had a real war in over 1,000 years. They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered, to either surrender immediately or try to fight them head-on. The British representative leaned forward. And what do you suggest instead? A slight smile crossed Thompson's face, something they'll never expect. We've already infected their systems with dormant viruses. Every scan they run on Earth is sending data back to us. Every communication they make is being recorded. And most importantly, they have no idea. The room grew quiet as images appeared on the screen. Alien ship schematics, weapon designs, shield frequencies, all stolen while the Empire thought they were dealing with primitives. We need to buy time, the Indian representative said. Keep them talking while we prepare. Agreed, said Thompson. And we need to do something unprecedented. We need every nation to share all military technology, all resources, all intelligence, everything. Surprisingly, there was no argument. The threat of extinction had accomplished what nothing else could. True human unity. For the next 24 hours, Earth was a hive of hidden activity. While governments publicly debated the alien ultimatum, underground bunkers hummed with supercomputers breaking alien codes. While news channels showed people panicking in the streets, engineers worked frantically to modify missile guidance systems with stolen alien data. The President of the United States sat in the Oval Office, reading the final draft of humanity's response. It had taken the world's best diplomats, psychologists, and military strategists to craft it. It needed to buy them time while also making their position clear. At exactly the 47-hour mark, Earth transmitted its reply. It was just one word, sent in the Empire's own language. No. In orbit, Captain Reed watched the response arrive. Unlike his superiors, he understood its significance. Every other species had either surrendered or sent long messages pleading for mercy or threatening resistance. None had ever simply said no. Even more worrying, his sensors detected the message had been sent using a perfect Imperial communication protocol, one that humans shouldn't have been able to understand, let alone replicate. On Earth, final preparations were underway. Military satellites quietly reoriented themselves, their new programming ready to activate. Nuclear submarines slipped silently into strategic positions. Computers worldwide stood ready to launch the largest coordinated cyber attack in history. In bunkers and bases around the world, soldiers waited beside hastily modified weapons. Scientists made final adjustments to radar systems and defense grids. Hackers put the finishing touches on viruses designed to wreak havoc on Imperial systems. The Empire had made a serious mistake. They thought they were starting a simple pacification campaign. Instead, they had awakened something they had never faced before, a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for war, that had developed computers before starships, that had split the atom before leaving its atmosphere. As the deadline passed, humanity waited in the darkness, ready for the Empire's first move. They didn't have the Empire's technology or experience, but they had something better. They had surprise. And for the first time in Imperial history, the hunters were about to become the hunted. Admiral West stood in Earth's hidden lunar command center, watching as the Imperial fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. 50 massive warships, each one capable of destroying the city, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. "Showtime," he muttered. Around him, military personnel from every major nation worked at their stations. No one spoke. They had trained for this moment for the past 48 hours straight. The Imperial Fleet Commander's voice boomed through their speakers. "Your time has expired. Prepare for pacification." West smiled. They had already cracked the Imperial communication codes. The aliens still had no idea. "All stations report ready," his assistant said. "Virus payloads primed. Modified satellites in position. Ground batteries armed." The Imperial ships moved forward in a standard attack pattern, exactly as their stolen data had predicted. They expected no resistance, just another simple conquest like the hundreds before. "Let them get closer," West ordered. "Wait for my signal." The first wave of Imperial fighters streaked toward Earth. On screens around the command center, they watched as the aliens prepared their shock and awe display, a standard Imperial tactic used to terrify primitive species into submission. "Now," West commanded. Across Earth's orbit, hundreds of inactive satellites suddenly came to life. But these weren't ordinary satellites. For the past 2 days, they had been modified with stolen Imperial shield technology. Small, hard to detect, and completely ignored by the Imperial fleet, they now activated as a massive defensive web. The Imperial fighters slammed into an energy barrier they hadn't known existed. 20 fighters exploded instantly. The others scattered in confusion. But that was just the beginning. "Launch cyber attack," West ordered. Around the world, military supercomputers sprang into action. The viruses that had been secretly planted in Imperial systems activated all at once. Ship after ship reported system failures. Shields flickered. Weapons wouldn't fire. Navigation systems showed false data. The Imperial commander's voice crackled with static. "Impossible. They're just primitives." "Launch missiles," West commanded. From hidden silos, submarines, and mountain bases, Earth's nuclear missiles rose into space. But these weren't ordinary nuclear weapons anymore. In 48 hours, humanity's scientists had modified them with stolen Imperial technology. Each one now carried a crude but effective shield-piercing warhead. The Imperial fleet scrambled to respond, but their targeting systems were compromised by viruses. Their communication channels were flooded with false orders. Their formation fell apart. The first modified nuclear missile struck an Imperial cruiser. Its advanced shields, designed to stop energy weapons, failed against the primitive but incredibly powerful atomic blast. The ship broke in half. "Primitive doesn't mean weak," West said to himself, watching as more missiles found their targets. The Imperial fleet commander finally realized the truth. They had severely underestimated this species. He gave the order to retreat, but even that wasn't easy. The viruses in their systems delayed the hyperspace drives from activating. Earth's defensive satellites continued firing, using the Empire's own energy weapon designs. More fighters fell. 3 more capital ships were destroyed before the fleet finally managed to jump to hyperspace. In just 45 minutes, the mighty Imperial fleet had lost 12 capital ships, over 100 fighters, and most importantly, their aura of invincibility. The Lunar Command Center erupted in cheers, but West raised his hand for silence. "It's not over," he said. "This was just their standard pacification fleet. We've surprised them, hurt them, and made them angry. Now they'll take us seriously." He turned to his communication officer. "Send word to all commands. Begin Phase 2 immediately. We have maybe a week before they return with a real invasion fleet." Around the Earth, hidden factories began mass-producing weapons modified with Imperial technology. Military scientists studied the data from the battle, looking for more weaknesses to exploit. Hackers worked to crack deeper Imperial codes. In orbit, the debris of Imperial ships was quickly collected for study. Every piece of alien technology would be analyzed, reverse-engineered, and used to improve Earth's defenses. The first battle was over. Humanity had won. But the real war was just beginning. And next time, the Empire wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating them. 6 months after Earth's first victory, the hidden asteroid base buzzed with activity. In a large chamber filled with captured Imperial technology, Dr. Adams studied the holographic display of their latest creation. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said to General Thompson. "An Imperial warship's power core combined with Earth's nuclear technology, something they've never seen before." The general nodded, watching workers install the hybrid engine into Earth's first true starship. They had named it Revenge. Humanity's first faster-than-light capable warship, built from the ruins of their enemies. "How many more can we build?" Thompson asked. "With the automated factories running at full speed, 20 by the end of the month. They're not as big as Imperial ships, but they're faster and harder to detect." The Empire hadn't been idle. 3 major attacks had struck Earth in the past 6 months. Each time, humanity's defenses had grown stronger. Each destroyed Imperial ship provided more technology to study and copy. Each failed attack taught them more about Imperial tactics. But now it was time to strike back. In the command center, Admiral West pointed to a holographic map showing Imperial supply lines. Their spies, humans taken as slaves from other conquered worlds, had provided valuable intelligence. "Their supply lines are stretched thin," West explained to the United Earth Defense Council. "They've never faced a species that fought back this hard. They have to move ships from other sectors to attack us, leaving their trade routes vulnerable." The plan was bold. While Earth's new hybrid ships would harass Imperial supply lines, specially trained teams would infiltrate Imperial worlds. Their mission: find other species who hated the Empire and give them the tools to fight back. The first raid caught the Empire completely by surprise. 5 Earth ships appeared out of hyperspace near an Imperial supply convoy. Their hybrid engines weren't as powerful as pure Imperial drives, but they had something better: unpredictability. "Fire hybrid missiles," ordered Captain Rogers from the bridge of the Revenge. The new weapons performed perfectly. Part nuclear warhead, part Imperial energy weapon, they overwhelmed the convoy's shields. The supply ships, loaded with materials for the next attack on Earth, never stood a chance. But the real victory came next. When Imperial reinforcements arrived, the Earth ships didn't retreat. Instead, they engaged in close combat, using tactics the Empire had never seen. Centuries of human warfare had taught them tricks the Empire had forgotten. The Earth ships darted between Imperial formation, turning their perfect military order into chaos. They fired conventional weapons through holes in energy shields. They used modified communications arrays to jam Imperial targeting systems. "They're running," shouted Rogers' tactical officer as the Imperial ships fled. But humans weren't just fighting in space. On dozens of Imperial worlds, Special Forces teams made contact with local resistance movements. They'd brought gifts: hybrid weapons, shield-piercing missiles, and most importantly, the knowledge that the Empire could be beaten. In his palace on Capital World, High Commander Wilson received report after report of disasters. Supply ships destroyed, communication networks disrupted, rebel attacks increasing on 100 worlds. "Impossible," he raged. "How can primitives do this?" The answer was simple but terrible for the Empire to accept. Humans weren't just copying Imperial technology. They were improving it, combining it with their own primitive weapons in ways the Empire had never imagined. Back on the Revenge, Captain Rogers received a new intelligence report. Their spies had located a major Imperial shipyard. 30 Earth ships gathered for the attack, their hybrid drives humming with power. "The Empire thought we would be easy to defeat," Rogers told his crew. They thought we would fight like everyone else they've conquered. Instead, we're fighting like humans, with everything we have, using every trick we know, and never, ever giving up. The Earth fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a changed galaxy. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire wasn't hunting weak prey. They were facing an enemy that fought back, that learned, that adapted. And for the first time in Imperial history, they were learning what it meant to be afraid. The Imperial Palace shook with another explosion. High Commander Wilson watched in disbelief as human ships darted through Capital World's defenses. A year ago, these primitives had barely achieved spaceflight. Now they were attacking the heart of the Empire itself. "My lord," a guard rushed in. "We must evacuate you immediately." Wilson ignored him, staring at the battle displays. The humans weren't using normal tactics. Their ships moved in strange patterns that Imperial targeting computers couldn't predict. Their weapons combined Imperial energy technology with Earth's nuclear power in ways that bypassed the strongest shields. "Send in the Royal Guard fleet," Wilson ordered. "Sir, we already did," the guard replied quietly. They were destroyed 10 minutes ago." In Earth's Lunar Command Center, Admiral West tracked the battle with satisfaction. "Push forward," he ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The human fleet had grown. Hundreds of hybrid ships, smaller than Imperial vessels, but far more maneuverable, swarmed around the capital's defenses. Each one carried weapons that didn't exist a year ago. Creations born from the fusion of two technologies. "Enemy shields failing in Sector 7, reported a tactical officer. "Launch the ground teams," West commanded. Drop pods shot from the Earth ships, carrying specially trained soldiers. Their armor combined Imperial energy shielding with Earth's best combat suits. Their weapons were just as hybrid. Rifles that fired ordinary bullets coated with Imperial energy fields, capable of piercing any defense. On the surface of Capital World, panic spread through the Imperial government. They had never expected this. Their military doctrine, unchanged for thousands of years, had no answer for humanity's constant innovation. In a secure bunker, the Imperial Council gathered for an emergency session. Observer Smith, the eldest member who had warned them about humans from the start, spoke first. "We must sue for peace," he said. "Every day we fight, they grow stronger. They learn our technology, improve it, combine it with their own in ways we never imagined." "Impossible," another council member shouted. "We cannot surrender to primitives." "Look outside," Smith replied calmly. "Their primitive nuclear weapons, enhanced with our own energy technology, just destroy our best defenses. Their primitive projectile weapons, modified with our shield technology, cut through our troops like paper." Above the planet, the battle continued. Human ships had adapted to every Imperial tactic. When the Empire tried to jam their communications, they switched to old-fashioned radio. When Imperial ships formed defensive squares, humans replied with swarm attacks that their computers couldn't track. Captain Rogers, leading the assault from his flagship Revenge, received new tactical data from Earth's AI systems. They had mapped every Imperial response, predicted every standard maneuver. The Empire's greatest strength, its unchanging stability, had become its fatal weakness. "They're launching escape ships," his sensor officer reported. "Let them go," Rogers ordered. "Let them spread the word. Let everyone know what happens when you underestimate humanity." In his palace chamber, Wilson received the final reports. 3 more core worlds had fallen to human-led rebellions. The Imperial fleet was in chaos. Their supply lines were cut, their communications compromised, their defenses failing. "How?" he whispered. "How did this happen?" The answer came from his tactical display. A human ship, barely the size of an Imperial cruiser, was destroying a dreadnought 10 times its size. It didn't fight like an Imperial ship. It didn't follow the rules of proper combat. It fought like what it was, a human weapon, unpredictable and lethal. "My lord," the guard insisted, The evacuation ship is ready. Wilson finally nodded. As he hurried through the palace corridors, alarms blaring around him, he remembered Captain Reed's warning from a year ago. They should have listened. They should have left the humans alone. In orbit, Admiral West gave the order to secure the planet. The Empire's capital, the seat of power for 10,000 years, fell to Earth forces in less than 6 hours. The message spread across the galaxy. Humanity hadn't just survived the Empire's attack. They had learned from it, adapted to it, and turned the Empire's own strength against itself. And they weren't finished yet. News of Capital World's fall spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On thousands of conquered worlds, slaves and servants whispered about the impossible. Humans had defeated the Empire's best fleet and taken their capital. On the desert world of Proxima Ia, an Imperial governor watched his security feeds in growing panic. The local enslaved population had somehow acquired hybrid Earth Imperial weapons. His guard shields were useless against them. "Send the emergency signal," he shouted to his staff. But it was too late. The Imperial communication network, once spanning the entire galaxy, was now full of holes. Human hackers had turned it into a weapon against its makers. In Earth's new command center on Capital World, General Thompson studied reports from across the galaxy. "Another sector has declared independence," he announced to his staff. "That makes 17 in the past week." The general remembered how it had started, with a simple no to Imperial demands. Now, barely 18 months later, humanity was reshaping the galaxy. But they weren't doing it alone. "Sir," a communication officer called out, "we're receiving requests for aid from over 300 worlds. They want our hybrid technology and training." Thompson smiled. The Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Humanity offered something different: the tools and knowledge for others to fight their own battles. On the industrial world of Centaurid Prime, human special forces watched as local resistance fighters used modified Earth weapons to take control of their planetary defense systems. The Imperial garrison, faced with weapons their shields couldn't stop, surrendered in hours. "You fight differently than the Empire," said the resistance leader to his human advisors. "They taught us that war was about proper formation and following ancient rules." "War is about winning," the human commander replied, checking his hybrid rifle. "And the only rule that matters is survival." Back on Capital World, Admiral West met with representatives from 50 newly freed systems. The Empire's Grand Meeting Hall, once a place where Imperial lords gave orders to trembling subjects, now hosted equals discussing the future. "We offer you technology, training, and support," West told them. "In return, we ask only that you help others win their freedom too." The response was immediate. Centuries of Imperial oppression had created countless enemies. Now, armed with human hybrid technology and tactics, those enemies became a devastating force. Imperial loyalists discovered their worst nightmare. They weren't just fighting humans anymore. Every conquered species they'd looked down on for centuries was rising up, using human weapons and strategies that ignored all the proper rules of warfare. On 1,000 worlds, Imperial statues fell. Their perfect formations were broken by guerrilla attacks. Their unbreakable shields shattered under hybrid weapons. Their flawless battle plans fell apart against enemies who refused to fight as expected. In the ruins of an Imperial fortress, Captain Rogers watched former slaves tear down the Empire's flags. "They ruled for 10,000 years, he said to his crew. "It took humans 18 months to show everyone it wasn't because they were superior. It was because no one fought back the right way." The Empire's structure was collapsing faster than anyone had expected. Without their capital, with their communications in chaos and their supply lines cut, Imperial forces began surrendering in entire sectors. Some Imperial commanders tried to adapt, to copy human tactics, but they had spent too long following the old ways. Their attempts at innovation were too little, too late. In the former Imperial Palace, now Earth's primary forward base, Dr. Adams showed visiting allies their latest hybrid technologies. The Empire kept everyone in their place by making them think Imperial technology was perfect, he explained. We showed everyone it could be improved, changed, combined with other ideas. The revolution wasn't just military. As worlds declared independence, they adopted new ways of thinking. The Empire's rigid hierarchy gave way to more flexible systems. Their unchanging traditions were replaced by innovation and adaptation. Humans taught us how to fight, said a resistance leader to his people. But more importantly, they taught us how to think differently, how to change, how to grow. The galaxy was transforming. The Empire, which had seemed eternal and unbeatable, was falling apart in months. And in its place, something new was rising. A galaxy where change was no longer feared, where adaptation was strength, and where no species would ever be called primitive again. 2 years after humanity's first contact with the Empire, the galaxy had changed forever. In the same grand hall where the Imperial Council once demanded Earth's surrender, representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to sign the Galactic Charter of Free Worlds. Admiral West stood at the podium, looking at the assembled delegates. Some were human, but most weren't. Former slaves sat beside their previous masters, now equals. Species the Empire had called primitive were helping design new hybrid technologies. The war is over, West announced. The last Imperial holdouts surrendered this morning. Cheers filled the hall. On screens across the galaxy, billions watched and celebrated. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was finally finished. In orbit above Capital World, now renamed Liberty Prime, Captain Rogers watched the celebration from his ship's bridge. The Revenge had been joined by thousands of other vessels, human ships flying alongside their alien allies' craft, all enhanced with hybrid technology. Message from Earth Command, his communication officer reported. They're starting Phase 4, the Great Archive Project. Rogers nodded. Humanity's greatest victory hadn't been destroying the Empire. It had been teaching others to free themselves. Now they would ensure no one could build another empire. In the Great Library of Liberty Prime, Dr. Adams led a team of scientists from 50 different species. They were documenting everything: Imperial technology, human innovations, and all the new hybrid creations that had won the war. The Empire kept knowledge restricted. Adams explained to visiting delegates, "We're making it free. Every world, every species will have access to all technology, all discoveries, all improvements." But not everyone celebrated. In a secure meeting room, General Thompson met with Earth's military leaders. "We've detected something," he said grimly. "Ancient energy signatures from beyond the galaxy's edge. Something was watching us fight the Empire. Something old." Observer Smith, the former Imperial counselor who had first warned about humans, spoke up. "There are older powers than the Empire," he said. "Ancient races who watch and wait. They saw what humanity did to us." "Let them watch," Thompson replied. "Let them see what happens when you underestimate humans. Add it to the warning in the Imperial records." In the records hall, automated systems updated the Empire's ancient database. Under the entry for Earth, new text appeared. "Warning. Human species extremely dangerous. Do not attempt conquest. They do not fight according to rules. They adapt technology in unexpected ways. They share knowledge freely with allies. Most dangerous of all, they teach others to fight like them." The warning would remain there for future generations, but humanity wasn't finished changing the galaxy. Ships were already being prepared for exploration beyond known space. Scientists were combining technologies in new ways. The age of rigid Imperial control was over. The age of innovation had begun. In Earth's lunar base, now a museum, Admiral West showed his grandchild the room where humanity had first faced the Empire. "They thought we were primitive because we didn't follow their rules," he explained. "They never understood that rules don't matter in a fight for survival." "What happened to the Empire's leaders?" the child asked. "Most surrendered. Some joined the new council. They learned what we've always known. The only constant in life is change. The Empire fell because it refused to change. We won because we never stop adapting. As night fell on Liberty Prime, the celebrations continued. In the streets, humans walked alongside former Imperial citizens and freed slaves. In laboratories, scientists from 100 worlds worked together on new discoveries. In shipyards, vessels were being built to explore unknown regions of space. The Empire was gone, but humanity's influence had just begun to spread. They had taught the galaxy that being different wasn't weakness, that adaptation was strength, and that no species was truly primitive. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, ancient eyes watched and worried. They had seen the Empire fall. They had seen how quickly humans could change from prey to predator. They had seen how eagerly other species learned human ways. The warning in the Imperial records was clear: do not fight humans. But perhaps there was an even more important warning that should have been added. Do not make them fight at all, because once humans teach others to fight back, the galaxy will never be the same again.